Good evening, everyone. This is the Halifax Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, September 26th. And as always, we are being filmed by Area 58, which is available to you on local access television and YouTube. And we will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi! It's the McCarthy twins. How are you?
Double doppers.
All right, we're going to start with
It's not fair, they got height and good looks too.
approval of the agenda.
I would move that we accept the agenda as it is. I have no changes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we're going to move on to Selectmen's minutes for the regular session, September 12, 2017. Did anyone have an opportunity to review?
Did.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next, we shift over to Mr. Guerin.
What I'd like to do is move to affirm the approval of the following warrants and commitments. Payroll warrant number 24 for $353,366.09. Vendor warrant number 25 for $185,108.35. Withholding warrant number 26, $139,738.88. Ambulance commitment 9A, $62,957, and ambulance commitment 9B for $40.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to move to approve the following warrant, vendor warrant number 27 for $262,986.14.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to move the schedule of bill payable for this date. Law account, Dush, Williams, and Rennis and Holland, aggregate total of $4,647.20. A lot of law account. Selectmen's expense account, Mass Municipal Association, $60. Youth and Rec concession stand expenditures, National Grid, $62.42. Town Hall electricity, National Grid, $1,372.45. That concludes my presentation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So who was the band leader? You did a lovely job
Thank you.
on the game on at Silver Lake. He's the conductor. In the nice jacket. Very nice jacket.
All right, I guess it's time to move on to general mail.
Sure. First, on the police department, the civil service list, Jennifer Keegan, who has been a permanent in office for several years, has declined for the third time to sign in as a candidate for a full-time police officer position. In accordance with the state statutes, there's a form that I would fill out that would require her now to no longer be a regular member of the department. So, I got that right, Chief?
Yeah, that's correct. Unfortunately, it's civil service rules that, once you decline the third time, you're taken off the list. I guess there's an option for special down the road if the board didn't have that discussion. But she's been great, no issues, no problems. I'm sorry to see her go this way, but civil service, so we have to deal with.
So you've had no contact with her concerning this particular matter at all, Chief?
Oh, yeah, well, she came in and signed the list for the third time. I mean, it's pretty common knowledge. We've had discussions over the years. I mean, the last time she signed the list, the second time, we had some talk about, when it comes up again, unfortunately, that's going to be the last chance to get on full-time for the department. So, it's a pretty known issue. And she signed the list last week. that she wasn't accepting the full-time position, so.
I, for one, am sorry, and, you know, because I've heard good things about her from the other officers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, no issues at all with job performance at all, it's one of those civil service laws that, we get stuck with.
So if the board would authorize the chair to sign the termination notice?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll talk, we have an appointment later with Makepeace for earth removal, so we'll go back over that in a minute, or a few minutes when they're here. School repair project, I did sign the combined change orders for the roof portion of the project that have been reviewed last week at the progress meeting. Kim or Tom may have, in fact, a report from that progress meeting. I wasn't able to attend because I was dealing with health insurance issues. Their next meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday on October 4th in the Selectmen's meeting room. I do need approval to sign off on the amendment for the project management services contract, which is the amount that was set aside in the MSBA's approved budget.
Before I make a motion for that, Charlie, I did attend that meeting, and I thought that I had made a motion at one meeting that sort of gave a blanket approval for you to sign off on these, and if I haven't, then I'd like to do that. So I would like to make a motion not only to approve those change orders, but I would like to give authorization to Charlie to sign off on those change orders that are deemed necessary and reasonable.
So moved.
All those in, second.
Second. Oh, no, I made the
Oh,
motion.
he moved it, second. All those in favor?
Aye. And, you know, we still will look at
Yes,
it, and I
right.
know you're not gonna do it without checking with us, but that way, for
I
time,
like spending millions of dollars.
yeah, you know, for time, because I know that, like, we had the roof contractor waiting for the approval, and he was, you know, it's just, we don't wanna hold anything up.
But besides, I don't know if either of you were at that meeting, was there anything of particular interest that we should?
No, I know that we had a brief conversation about the next project, actually, and we talked about, we are still on schedule for the roof, the window siding. The drawing should be done in October, which is what we expected. And I think that we've sort of committed to continuing these twice-a-month meetings, even once the roof project is completed. But yeah, no, the roof project, you know, we talked a little bit about that. No project is completely 100%, you know,
Done
without
well.
flaws.
Yeah,
And
glitch-free.
that, you know, we were fortunate that some of the leaks occurred when people were still on site. And, you know, it's not the best roof design originally, so we're really just working with what we have. And I think that this roof company, and Tom, I know you've spent a lot more time talking to them about it than I am only pretending to know and talking about that roof.
Well, I'm pleased with despite the leaks, which are not that uncommon in a project that size, they've been extremely responsive. They've been on top of anything that we had a problem with. And those things just happen. It's a big project, and you can't finish everything every day, and you try to make temporary provisions, but, you know, depending on the actual event, they can work or not work. But all things considered, I think they're a pretty quality contractor, and I'm pleased that we have them on that job.
Now, the estimation of completing the roof is, they said at one point by the end of this month, is that still on schedule or no?
I'm sorry?
Finish doing the roof top
Right.
by the end of the month?
Well, we lost a week, so
Because of the rain.
But it was
Yeah.
a hurricane. What's that got to do with it?
But they work, literally, only because the light actually goes into my room in my house.
yeah.
They're working till 10 o'clock. That light is on, and they're out there working whenever they can. And they actually worked on Saturday.
They
so
worked Saturday. I saw them on the
Yeah,
roof on
they've
Saturday.
been trying to make up for that.
So the question is, answer is that they're not going to be complete.
I don't think,
No.
I don't think we're going to be 100%
Okay.
done.
No.
No.
All right, thank you.
No, and I think really the major item is the cladding of the chimneys. That's going to be the most time consuming.
I guess, fuel storage purchase, just a reminder, we're going to have the revocation hearings for those 2 weeks from now. I know that the country club has made some efforts to pay their back taxes. I know that our treasure collector is researching which properties are owned by the interests that own the country club, and we'll make sure that where they are in terms of standing for those properties also.
I thought, I spoke to Nazarello the other day, and I thought he said that, I seem to remember him getting rid of at least one of those tanks.
Yes, but officially, we need to do the revocation hearing.
Oh, okay.
We've gone through that issue. It's similar to a situation we had a few years ago with another fuel storage permit, and we went over it with council and determined that even though,
The person has gone forward and got rid of it, we have to officially make it for record purposes to be done.
yeah, in some cases, the tank isn't even there necessarily.
Yeah.
They simply had gotten the permit back years ago, never used it, and then said, okay, we're giving up the permit, but we still have to go through the revocation.
Okay. Just asking.
Just on the land use council, the deadline for hearing back from folks is the 28th. I thought it was today, but it isn't, so I still may be getting submissions from law firms in the next couple of days. We'll see how that falls out. I may want the board to hold a special meeting to interview firms or to talk with our current land use council. I'll see what comes in and then contact the board, and we'll see what we want to do about scheduling. Obviously, we're going to talk about zoning issues later tonight. In terms of signature authority, we have a couple of departments, it's the forms that the town accountant wants the board to sign off on. Let's see. So there's one for the assessors, also ones for the selectmen's expense and payroll, and also the office machines and data processing.
Signature for the board.
Oh, okay.
So those just need to be completed by the board. We did receive a recycling grant for $8,400 from the state for Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. I'm waiting to hear back from Susan Johnson as to exactly how the money will be used for the operations at the recycling center. Land use council already.
Oh, he already signed it
We
here.
did get a thank you note from Nate Kuhn, who's the,
Yeah. Did he check with the
I've
veteran?
gotten nothing yet.
Okay, because I've gotten some feedback from people who just really don't want a lot of stuff going around that. So I just wanted to make sure that the veterans agent had been contacted.
I know the veterans agent was contacted, at least through me. I have to now go back to the correspondence to see if there's any communication directly between him and Nate. I've tried to reach out to Nate a couple of times to say what's happened with the project. I may need to send a physical letter in this
Okay.
case
All
to
right.
see what things will stand. Joy Morrill has asked not to be reappointed to the Cultural Council. The board wanted to send her a letter, thank you for her service.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The board needs to affirm having Troy sign off on the MEMA grant for $2,460. This is for a enclosed trailer that would be used to transport off-the-road vehicles when conditions were needed, and/or for storage of items to keep them out of the weather.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just as the trash situation at 395 Plymouth Street's improved. I talked to the Board of Health today. There are a number of other issues at the property, but the trash one is in much better shape now. They now have dumpsters for both trash and recycling. As far as 21 Plymouth Street, the buildings commissioner is still working on that with the state as to what options we might pursue in terms of handicapped access. And for instance, it may be that the property owner is going to have to get various waivers from state agencies
Yes.
to be able to use the building. This is the two-story gazebo. 47, 42, I think the vehicle maintenance issue is going to take a few minutes. We'll get back to that. Just so you know that our building inspector did get an extension to January 31st, 2018 for his certification program. That's normal. It takes a while to go through and take all the necessary courses to be certified. Home Street Playground, Steve Hayward, according to Dick Steele, Steve Hayward, the highway surveyor's crew were out on the playground and everything seems to be okay. I guess the damage that was done was repaired. Inventories, both municipal and school building committee and the parks committee did submit inventories, so that's, the whole list for this year is complete. Sergeant Caprio had sent me a note about a property owner putting out floats that enclosed a fairly large area on the north side of East Mount Ponce Pond. I had checked with the state about that. They handle docks and things like that. They don't handle floats, basically a series of floats. But it would be sent back to the harbor master, who happens to be the police chief.
I think all of us sign this.
Are we talking about the floats for the water ski?
No, this is a series of floats that enclose an area right by the shore.
I haven't seen it.
Okay,
So
Sergeant
I'll,
Caprio,
I'll talk to the side and
no.
take a look at it.
Set up 7:45.
So, you told us 7:45, so if you want to move on to your 7:45.
Why, it's the first time I'm trying to write 2018.
Okay,
Trying to push it.
Alrighty. I guess we'll move on to our 7:45. And that would be White Dog Cranberry. Continuation of the earth removal hearing.
Do I need to sign something?
Come on down. Hi.
How you doing tonight?
Good, how you doing? Hi.
How you doing? Doing all right?
I haven't seen you in a while.
Been a while?
Life is good?
No complaints?
Not in the dirt.
What's,
No regrets? Yeah.
yeah.
You're not.
I brought a couple of extra packets out there of the information that we
Oh, yes.
revised.
Last picture. Yeah, it's in here, right?
There's a plan here. I don't know if they,
We did, yeah.
I might need to read it.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Do you need one?
There's another one in a folder, but I'll give it to you at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
I'll just take one of theirs for my class.
No, you will not.
All right, well, I guess Brian Grady presented the project to you the last time he was here. I was originally going to do it, but I was tied up with something else and another town continued to drag on. But in any event, he passed on to me the questions that were asked, or a couple of comments that were brought up at the prior meeting. I think some documentation really on the size of the reservoir, which the letter outlines the need for the material. And what we did is just provided a little more clarification on the removal and tried to break it up into two phases. So I think what we did this time around is on this cover sheet, we indicated where the reservoir is, as was shown originally. Showed a couple of small stockpile areas that are outside the reservoir on the phase one portion. But as we looked at it a little closer, a portion of the phase two area could be utilized also for some stockpiling in the event that it's needed. But I think the reason that we divided it into two portions was predominantly due to the fee and the way the permit reads and the execution of the permit. We just tried to narrow it down so that we can minimize the out-of-pocket expense to White Dog with the removal fee. And what we tried to do further is to identify what portion of the removal would remain on the site and the purpose that material would remain on the site, and the portion of which would leave the site. So if I flip to the second sheet, what we essentially did is just divided it in half and called this phase one and phase two, so that we were able to show that it would be really about a 40,000 yard removal project per year. What we estimate is about 20,000 would leave the site, and 20,000 would remain on the property for use during cranberry operations. Maintenance sanding, for example, is a pretty big demand on the cranberry grower. Fortunately, they have a good quantity of sand that's suitable for the agricultural practice. And with his 54 acres of bog out there in his total farm, that consumes quite a bit of sand on a maintenance basis, and in addition to renovations of small pieces and upkeep of the bog. So what we expect to do is retain 20,000 yards on site for cranberry operations and for slope stabilization. When we complete the excavation, we want to maintain our slope stabilization. So all topsoil would remain on the site. We wouldn't be taking any of that off. And we would plan on taking roughly 20,000 yards of unsuitable material that wouldn't necessarily be suitable for bog sanding and the bog project for cranberry operations. So that was one of the major things that we showed. We also identified in the letter the reason why we need the supplemental water. We're a little bit under what the industry standards require, and DEP allows us to use, permits about 10 acre-feet of water per acre of cranberry bog. We're way under that on our permit that we were granted by the state and what have you, so we're closer to 5 acre-feet. So it really requires us to capture and reuse as much water as we can on the site. We designed the cranberry bog projects, both the phase 1 and the second phase, and we implemented all the best management practices associated with water conservation. So we have implemented tailwater recovery, which is really the act of recovering excess water and returning it back to the reservoir. So when you look at those plans, or not necessarily this plan, but that figure 2 that indicates all the cranberry acreage, all of our bogs have been designed with the canals returning excess water back to the reservoir. That's one of the major water management, water conservation measures. The other is having watertight flumes in the cranberry bog acres, which is what we have anyway, and then also NRCS designed and approved sprinkler systems, which are in operation, have been in operation throughout the duration of the cranberry project. But those are just elements of the water conservation measures. We still are very, very tight with water. Each and every year, water always has been an issue with white dog, so that's really the primary purpose of the project. Secondary purpose is generating the material for use on the bog. And the third portion would be the sale to help generate some revenue for farm operations. So that's pretty much the purpose and the rationale behind the project, in the way the project was designed and how it currently operates. I think as far as the previous letter, the review that was provided by land planning, they wanted us to document the water usage. I did that in the letter. I did forward a copy of the letter to land planning today. I'm not certain if they received it. I did that late in the day. Did you guys?
Yeah, I was there. Wasn't in there in the afternoon, so they had gone in the afternoon.
Okay.
I hadn't had a chance to.
So we identified the reasons we needed the excavation. We identified the issues on the water consumption. Water table, the test pits that we excavated out on the site indicate the water is to be at about at elevation 40. That's what we've noted on the plan, is that elevation 40 would be the design elevation, and the total volume of water in the bog would be, in the pond would be 40 acre feet. I think we revised one of the notes, and what we do plan to do is dig this in the wet condition. The material is really kind of, I don't know, it's pretty interesting out there. You know, at certain times of the year, it's very difficult to deal with. Other times of the year, it's much easier to deal with. But John Makepeace, who's here, he's the operator of the farm. you know, he's pretty familiar. He built the bogs, he dug the reservoirs, so he has a real good handle on what to expect out
By
there.
himself?
Well, he had a lot of help, but he was in charge of it all, so he was, I'd say yes, he pretty much did it alone. But in any event, the material can be excavated and, you know, really loaded directly into trucks. You can move from a wet hole to a drier area. The material is so tight in most instances that we're not digging a real, let's call it a sloppy mess when we're excavating out that material. If we did hit some wetter stuff, there are some areas that we can stockpile it and just let it drain by itself. And we can do that here, or in this phase 2 area. So we have plenty of area there. It's about a little better than 2 acres there for stockpiling and loading. But throughout his acreage, when you might look to where he would place his sand for his agricultural operations, he probably strategically located little landing areas that exist throughout the acreage. So it just facilitates the sanding of each one of the bogs. So usually they just dump a stockpile in a particular area, then they load it into the sanding buggies and put the sand on the bog. So there's multiple locations throughout the site that sand gets deposited. So it wouldn't be one gigantic pile with 20,000 yards of material in it. It would be a series of piles located throughout the site. Some of it would obviously be used as it's excavated, stockpiled, and placed on the site.
I have one question, man. So, where does the water come from in the first place?
Well, actually,
Because you're sort of isolated over there. There's no, that I'm aware of, no major pond or anything close by, is there? So
No,
it's groundwater or oil water?
yeah, it's a little bit of groundwater and surface water, really, for when it rains. And that sort of
yeah,
thing.
predominantly it's groundwater fed reservoir, but the way we did design everything with that tailwater element, that all the rainfall that falls on the bogs, it
Drains
can
off
be
there,
returned
too.
back to the pond, so we're always able to maintain a high water level.
Just constantly recycling the same water over and over and over.
That's good.
Nothing ever leaves the site, nothing really comes in.
But it's a groundwater fed system for the entire acreage.
Well, that answers my question, because I was curious whether or not it's a really swampy area over there, or is it just, you have a good seepage for groundwater coming up?
The groundwater table has to be relatively high there.
Yeah.
It is, it would be roughly at elevation 40, so that's how we determine that, it's through a test pit. It's relatively shallow groundwater.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
He did such a wonderful job explaining everything. I have no questions.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything. Is anything within the buffer zone? I was looking to see.
We're outside the 100-foot
Yeah,
buffer
it
zone.
looked
That
like
was
you
our
were.
goal, is
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep
It looked like you
outside.
designed it that way.
We did.
Yeah.
I think our big issue is, we talked to Charlie previously about the bond that needed to be placed
Over the highway.
for the roadway.
Yeah.
I think the highway superintendent stated that a $5,000 bond would be suitable, something to that order in that order of
That's what it was,
magnitude.
yeah.
So there is no issue on that. One of the questions that we did have is there's also a provision for a performance bond within the permit. And, if you look at, we question really, the need to require a performance bond on the project where it's in his backyard, it is his farm. I think the area speaks for itself, but, I would defer to the board's judgment on that. We don't necessarily see the need. However, once again, I would defer to your judgment on that particular thing. And also the issue of the fee with the material coming over the road and how that fee is paid. Typically, it's, I think, 25 cents a yard. If we were looking at a 20,000 yard removal, I think we'd be required to pay what is that, 25 is $5,000? Was that 25 cents on 20,000?
Was it 25 cents?
Talk to the mathematician. That's
I think that's reasonably accurate, but, and then the methodology of tracking the material as it leaves the site, when it leaves the site, In other towns that we work in, it seems to
Truck
be.
slips, right?
Pardon me?
Wouldn't you use the trucking slips?
Exactly.
Yep.
It's essentially an honor system type of
Right.
thing. We can verify that with topo as-built after the fact. to
Do your
verify.
calculations of cubic yards?
Correct, yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we just talked about, as John and I ourselves, is how we might want to present something to you in that regard. I mean, we don't have a problem with putting up, I think, the fee for 20,000 yards and track that over the course of a year. And then when we have to come back the following year for the second phase, the permit is only good for a year, so we have to come back before you. I
Right.
think it's an opportunity to do
To
checks and
adjust.
balances on the fee and see how the project worked out, see if there's any issues. So those were really the things that we wanted to address with you tonight, in addition to the technical elements.
Any further questions?
I think I'm good.
All right, so do we move to approve the earth removal permit? Do I need to add any other
Well,
stipulations
I
as
don't know, if you
presented?
guys still want a
Do
bond,
we-
a performance bond, if
Yeah.
that's something you
Yeah, do
want,
I-
and I need an amount.
I mean, that's typically what we do.
Um,
I mean, obviously, it's on his property and not somebody else's, but,
Yeah, but we've never not had a performance bond at the
Yeah.
time that I've said here.
yeah, I'm kind of.
And I appreciate the fact that it's on your property and everything else, but
Most of them are on somebody's property. so-
best laid plans of men and mice.
Yeah,
Yep, no, that's fine, I understand.
yeah.
That would be my preference, to continue with what we customarily do. So you want to make that motion with the
Yes,
um,
road bond and the performance bond?
yes.
Yeah,
Second.
and how much did you want a performance bond
What's the percentage that we normally do?
Yeah, that seemed kind of low, but,
for? Well, I know, well, the $5,000 one, that was what the highway surveyor come up with.
No, that was for the road bond, but
Right,
for
road
the
bond,
performance-
right.
Right, but
But for the performance bond, what do we typically do? Charlie, do you remember
We
what we
don't really have any crime. The concern simply is that it should be sufficient that if for some reason we end up with the responsibility for restoring the property, that it's sufficient to do that. I agree with everybody that it's fairly unlikely that that's going to happen. Nevertheless, it should be measurable, but it doesn't have to be some huge amount, I would think. I mean, if nothing else, if they're walking off the property, we're probably going to get the property.
Yeah, right.
And do something with it.
Charlie, do you remember what we typically?
It's been a long, long
I
time
know,
since
I-
we've done one.
Yeah,
well, I can go back, well, we did Morse, go back to 5,
I would think under the circumstance the way it is, it's between $5,000 and $10,000 would be fine for a performance bond.
yeah, I mean, we take all of that, not that we'd probably end up doing it, but it would take all of that to
Yeah.
machine that back in.
Yeah.
Or out back, it- or continue it out, or machine it back in.
okay.
I was more concerned about the $5,000 road bond, but,
Being enough,
yeah,
yes, but,
yeah, I mean, if that's,
that's what he came up with. I don't know if he took what the portion of the road that he would be traveling on and did some.
in
math
Plimpton,
that
well,
way.
he's close to the Plimpton
Plimpton
line there,
line,
so there
yeah.
isn't much road there between.
Yeah.
Depending on which way they're going, if they're heading down.
I would think that they'd be going down toward Plimpton, if they're going to Middleborough to drop off the dirt, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they'd probably jump on 24,
yeah,
I mean, 44.
44, yeah.
44.
So
Yeah,
there isn't much road there, it's pretty close to the town line there.
Yeah.
And we just recently repaved that area.
Well, that's what my initial concern was.
So-
okay, so do you want to split the difference into $7,500, since we don't know if we do between 5 and 10, $7,500 performance?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's not gonna make a whole lot of difference, but, yeah.
okay, all right,
So we're gonna change that to,
7,500 and then 5,000
Found 5,000 for that.
for the,
Guys,
mhm.
first and second?
Second.
we're good?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Good luck.
So how did we do we want to discuss how we want to handle the fee on the 25 cents per yard?
Up front? I'm kidding.
No, I mean, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
I'm sorry.
I just didn't want to leave without having that kind of discussed.
Can I go place, give us an increase in pay? Yeah.
Well, you could do it in phases, I suppose.
I would say phases.
Yeah,
I would say,
At 10, you take, 40,000 yards total coming off-site?
No, 20,000.
20,000.
On the first
Yes.
phase. So at 10,000, at half, at 10,000
Yes.
yards, we'll settle up, and then at the 20,000?
Okay, that's fine.
That's reasonable?
Yep, no, had no objection to that, that's fine.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye. Anything else?
No, I think
That's
that those were the three major items that I think that we've,
So the work he's gonna do is gonna improve the taste of the cranberries, right? Because we're
I hope
not
so.
like that.
They're gonna be juicier, is that how?
so,
Trying.
okay.
No hybrids, right?
I think we have them there.
It's okay.
Thank you. We're good.
Well, thanks very much for your time, do appreciate it, and,
Well, you always do
It's
such a
nice
good
to see you.
presentation.
well, we'll look forward to seeing you
You
again.
had me all
Thank you
confused.
very much.
I didn't know why we were.
Thanks a lot.
Project.
Folks, have a good evening.
Yep, thank you so
Well.
much. Good luck.
Just need to talk to Bill for a moment.
I'm sorry?
I need to talk to Bill.
Yeah, okay, so, do we want to move on, or do we want to take a short break?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll
Thank
take
you.
a 5-minute break? Or do we want to move on to our 8 o'clock?
Well, it's at the 8 now, so we should.
Well, Charlie's done a lot of the legwork on the 8 o'clock appointment, so maybe we should wait for him.
Yeah, I will.
So we're gonna wait a few minutes for Charlie to come back, about 5 minutes. We're back. 8 o'clock.
Or something resembling.
Something resembling, yes, exactly. We have the ZBA, the Planning Board, the Building Inspector, and the Board of Health zoning proposal discussion.
Right, and because there've been more, I wanted to start off with the entertainment one, but realizing that I was gonna have everybody come in, I wanted to talk about a few other things that have been sitting sort of in the docket that we haven't been doing anything with. I'd like to see if we could move forward on making some changes. On the outdoor entertainment, you should have something from me dated August 22nd and something from the ZBA dated September 13th, which was a response to what I had written, looking for suggestions about it. The idea here initially is that right now in the agricultural residential zone, outdoor entertainment's not allowed as a permitted use, period. It's not a special permit, it's not as a by right. Given the circumstances that we've been operating under for the last couple of years, I thought that it would be at least prudent to see if the town would want to zone for, on a limited basis, agricultural, in the agricultural residential zone, outdoor entertainment. And talked to council about this, started off with some basic places that are items that would be included in a possible bylaw. The ZBA then sent in some specific recommendations, in the sense of I had left a lot of things blank. They had some good ideas about filling in those blanks, whether it was the amount of acreage that would be needed for a particular parcel to allow this, setbacks, how many days a year events would be allowed on a particular parcel, hours of operation, dealing with noise, public safety personnel, toilets, surety bonds and such, and whether alcohol would be allowed on the event. And so, as I mentioned, this, when I wrote this back in August, this was meant to be a starting point. It wasn't by any stretch of the imagination, a definitive, here's what we need to do. It was a starting point. And the ZBA has helped by saying, okay, well, these are good ideas. We'd like to, in terms of filling in those blanks, here's how we think they should be filled in, and start the discussion from that point.
Okay. Do we want to read them, or do we want, what do you suggest?
Well, I don't know if I want to read the whole thing, because we've got both the ZBA's suggestions, but to start, if there are people here who want to start or continue the discussion essence.
Well, I personally want, before we even get started, is just how many people think this would be a good idea? I mean, the suggestions and stuff that are made here, but what's the feeling on passing the zoning bylaw like that? Because I think that's important.
I'm for allowing outdoor entertainment events. I think they should be by right, but I think we do need to set restrictions on them.
Anyone else?
I've talked to hundreds of people,
We should probably be identifying ourselves, by the way.
Dan, sorry, 175
Is
L.
that little gentleman's name?
Mark Millius.
Okay.
I've spoken with hundreds of people. The mobile home park, 36, Hemlock Lane, 106, Brandeis Circle. And unless someone goes to that event or is involved with it, I haven't had one person tell me that they want this in town.
Oh, really?
Not one. Okay? Now, I'm coming from the beginning here and saying, the process that's taking place is not broken. This happened in 1993 with the horse shows. And as I understand it, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole town, the boards were united, and there was a lawsuit because it was obvious that the horse shows were not agricultural. But in that lawsuit, it was won, and the horse shows were allowed as being agricultural.
Well, I wouldn't say that, in fact. But they were allowed specifically in the consent agreement. They were not specifically allowed because they were agricultural. It was part of the agreement between the town and the promoter of the horse shows. It didn't specify that horse shows are agricultural.
Okay, so we have the exact, in my opinion, we have a very similar situation here. And we should let that process play out. What if it comes back that it is allowed? And then we've done this thing, and we've breached what's always been sacrosanct, is you don't allow large commercial events in residential zones. I've been in town for decades, since 1991, and a lot of other people have, and they've been paying for decades their property taxes with the assumption that they're living in a residential zone that doesn't allow this type of thing, agricultural residential zone. So we have a process that's not broken. What if they win, and what if it's allowed? Then we've done this thing we don't even need to do.
Well, in any event, we would be making a proposal at town meeting, whether this board decided to propose it or endorse it, or some other board or some group of citizens could come forth with a warrant article. The whole idea here is to Charlie's point earlier, is to discuss it and see whether there's any consensus for this or not.
Right, but the question was asked, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, no, right, exactly,
Right,
yeah.
right. And I've,
Just to clarify one other point, not to
Yes.
interrupt you,
no,
since that original horse show decision, I think the law has changed in terms of commercial riding establishments are now included under the definition of agriculture.
Right.
So that has changed a little bit.
Right, but.
correct, but I'm talking about the process.
No, I understand. I just wanted to clear that up.
But they do have a limit.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing I would mention is, in real time, we're seeing what happens over time. So it wasn't allowed, and then in 1993 it was allowed, and it was how many shows back then?
Well, I think the issue that I take with this is that on a smaller scale, we allow music and outdoor entertainment at people's homes. And they've done that already when they have parties and
But it's not
cookouts.
commercial.
Personal events.
It's not commercial, but at the same time, the argument could be put that you're already doing it in town as it is. We just want to make it a little larger. And I'm not saying what it is, but I'm just saying, we already have stuff on the books that allow us to allow people to have, and we don't tell a person what number of people they could have at their event when they have cookouts or barbecues or whatever. So they could have 60 to 100 people come out to a cookout. Is that an outside event?
And what I was getting at, and what I was saying was, look at what's happened. We've gone from X amount of shows to now 30 shows. Because what you're talking about, calling this an entertainment or a festival is really not fair. What it is, it's a commercial business entertainment permit. And so now you're gonna have businessmen who are gonna make investments, and they're gonna want a return on their investment. And they'll have it for a few years, and people put up with it, they'll go for 4 days. And people, because it could be different members on the board, on every board, will say, well, no one's complaining, even though people complained at the beginning. Because people just want to live their lives. And that's how we've gone from, I don't know how many shows at the beginning, to 30. And all I'm saying is this is gonna keep happening and keep growing, because we're talking about commercial, not private, not a public event, not an institutional event, but a commercial event. And that's a tremendous distinction.
On the question on the horse shows is that the original limitation was 25, it's now 30 as part of the new consent agreement. In terms of the concern about increasing the number of days allowed on other venues, that's why one of the specific provisions in the proposed bylaw is to limit the number of days on one property. Now, could, just as we're going, let's say, from 0 to 2, let's say, if the bylaw was passed, it would require going back to town meeting, not for a specific event, but for the changing the bylaw to increase the maximum number of days that would be allowed on the property. And that requires a 2/3 vote. So it's not a simple matter of someone proposing, well, I want now to have a weekend, 3 days, including Friday, festival. They'll have to go to town meeting, not just for themselves, but for the town as entire, and get that vote. And it still doesn't mean that they get that special permit. They'll still need to go through the special permitting process. So it's not a situation that someone comes to the ZBA or the planning board a month before the event and says, well, I now want to go to Friday. It's just not going to happen. They're going to have to go through all those hurdles to get that done.
Yeah, I guess all I was saying was, we went from 1993 to nothing like being allowed. Now the town board seemed to be on board to propose this. I mean, the planning board endorsed it at the last town meeting before the question was posed. So I guess what I'm getting at is the mindset that you don't do this thing to begin with. Nobody I talk to wants it.
If I could, obviously we may have different social circles, but I've found no negative feedback from it. I've heard only things positive, and even on that meeting that you're referring to with the planning board endorsed it, it seemed that no one was against one of the events that was discussed. There were two different events, two different types of events. So I think that to blanket all of them would not be what the people in the town have voiced, at least to me. So I think that we have to look at all different types of entertainment and outdoor entertainment to make sure that whatever restrictions we put on it, because I believe it should be passed, to make sure that it looks at those different things. There could be some that don't make noise. There could be some that are so far away that have no effect on neighbors. I don't know that we should be stopping those if it's things that people in the town want to have. I heard no one against the Mudfest specifically, but for the music concert. Those are two different types of events, and I don't know that we should regulate them the same. Maybe we should, but I think that should be looked at, and to see what types of events would be allowed in town or would be wanted in town.
Mr. Gainer, because your hand was up quicker.
For again, Chemical Way, Halifax. I agree. I think, I agree with Dan, and to the point that we do have to go back and look and see what the cause and effect is to having permits and shows and stuff like this. And I think we do have a track record that has proved itself. I mean, here's Halifax, Massachusetts on TV, with the riding shows and whatnot. And also the track record as far as Mudfest goes. We've spoken with on several occasions with the chief of police, and over the 6 or 8 different shows that they've had so far, there's never been any trouble. There's never been an arrest as far as I know. The only complaints I believe were the very first year were people on the Hemlock. Other than that, I don't see, I don't hear an awful lot of feedback, regarding that, say, specific event. I do think with the handouts that were given, I do think each event should be judged on its own merit, on a cause and effect, on what's being involved as far as music, noise, and disturbance. But even as I believe the chief had pointed out, it does bring people into the town of Halifax, even if it's revenue generating. But again, I do I agree with both parties, but I do think each one should be judged, on its own criteria and its own merit, and then regulated accordingly. And I think the proposal that Mr. Seelig has passed out and put together, I think those issues
Or
have at
addressed.
least been have been addressed, so that they could be tweaked as need be, you know?
Thank you. I saw another hand, Mr. Anders.
Yeah, I mean, the planning board did hold a hearing the last time around, and we did have a lot of opposition from it, especially from the trailer park. So I mean, to say that there hasn't been any opposition, I would kind of disagree with that. You know, there was plenty of opposition about doing outside entertainment. The other question I had was, you know, we're talking about one event here, and this by special permit, but just by history of the town, I mean, couldn't the ZBA just give a special permit for more days than that?
I don't see how, in the sense of if we're specifically restricted.
If it's restricted
in the
in the
bylaw,
bylaw.
that it's only a certain number of days on any one property in any given year.
So
And then-
they can't
and then
give-
only by
They can't
special
give a
permit.
special permit outside of that.
I don't
The
see
zoning bylaw.
Well, it would be written for a specific amount of days and then only by special permit. is
Right,
the-
so
the
for instance,
language
if
would
we
be.
say, as part in the bylaw, it says, no property, it's still gonna be by special permit, but the limit on the number of days for any one property will be a certain number of days each year.
You know what, can I,
Except for a special permit? or
No,
that's
you need the
included?
special,
That includes.
that's an automatic restriction, just like the hours of operation are an automatic restriction, a no alcohol is an automatic restriction.
So as a bylaw, the zoning board cannot give a special permit outside of that.
Right.
can I make a comment? I don't disagree with Mr. Vasari in the sense of we should never develop a bylaw specifically for an event. I don't particularly subscribe to that sort of mentality because, again, you're changing what the town looks like for one specific event. Because everybody knows that this all started with the Mudfest thing, and so that's what we should talk about. And nobody's had an issue with Mudfest. It's been a wonderful thing, and it was really this board who, you know, we issued the original entertainment license, not really looking that there could be a zoning issue. So that was definitely where this whole thing started. But I think it's important that, Charlie, if you just do a brief overview for the people at home, like we have this written, and I don't want you to read the whole thing, but if you could just specify, like, who's going to issue the special permit? Like, are we still going to be involved for the entertainment permit? So if you wouldn't mind just
Well,
doing
I'll take on a couple of things. First, in terms of zoning, there's generally three categories of use. One is what's called as of by right. For instance, if you're building on a normal lot, a single-family house, you just go into the building inspector, you've got your 40,000 square feet, you've got your 150 feet of frontage, you show them the house plan, as long as it meets the building code and everything else, you don't have to go and notify your neighbors you're building a house. You don't have to advertise in a newspaper. There's no hearing process or anything like that. That's the use of by right. Now, there might be restrictions still in the bylaw that, for instance, your house can only be a certain number of feet away from a lot line. That's a restriction, but as long as you're meeting those restrictions, you can still build your house. On the other hand, there's the, you can't do this, period. I don't care where you are, I don't care who you are, we're not allowing this particular use in this particular area in town. You're not going to get a permit to do that. The third is the in-between, where you say, we're allowing it under certain circumstances, and in fact, because this is such a particular use, you need to go to a particular board and get what's called a special permit. In Halifax, for the most part, the special permits are issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that requires the applicant to notify abutters certain radius around the property. We notify the departments so that they get their input in there. They have to have a public hearing, there has to be a notice in the newspaper. It's very specific in the state statutes. And in fact, it requires a supermajority of the ZBA. On a 5-member board, you have to have at least 4. Not a simple majority of 3 to 2, but a supermajority of 4 to 1 to approve that special permit. In this case, what I've proposed initially is we would stay with the ZBA as a special permit granting authority. Someone who wanted to do one of these events would have to go to the ZBA with the hearing, with the notice to the abutters, notice in newspapers and such, and make a presentation. Because it's a special permit, it's not automatically granted. There are provisions in the state law that says it needs to meet certain stipulations as to we're going to allow this particular thing, and this particular use in this particular lot or area. So it's not, as a by right means you get to go in there. Special permit means you've got a few more hurdles to go over. And when you're writing zoning bylaws, you can sort of do a starter set to say, just as we talked about the single-family houses, that a house can be placed on this 40,000 square foot lot. But to do that, it's got to have a setback. It can't be closer to the street than a certain number of feet. It can't be closer to the back lot line than a certain number, or the sides. You can still do it, but in the zoning bylaw, it specifically says these are the setbacks, these are the restrictions. It's the same thing for the special permit. Yes, we'll grant you a special permit, but it comes with this set of automatic stipulations. Now, we can talk about the details of that, but the stipulations that are going to be in the zoning bylaw won't be able to be changed via a special permit. They'll be able to do it, but with these stipulations. So for instance, how big a lot will be required to hold the event? I put in initial 2 acres just to put it in there, to start, so that some of a normal 40,000 square foot lot, a house lot, isn't going to be able to have an entertainment permit along these lines. The ZBA suggested, well, maybe we should be increasing it to 5 acres. Like I said, this is indefinite. We would write the bylaw one way or the other, and it would be definite in the bylaw. But at this point, we're discussing what sort of restrictions should be put in there. The setbacks. How far away should it be from a lot line? How far away should it be, for instance, from a particular residential area? Or maybe the lot line isn't enough, so that it has to be a certain number of feet even farther away from anybody's house, as an example. How many days a year can the property be used for an event? What we're talking about here is 2 days. It could be 2 consecutive days, or it could be 2 separate days. But no more than 2 days out of that 365 or 366 days of the year could you hold that type of entertainment event.
On that property.
Right.
So let's say I couldn't do, I'm just going to use, I couldn't do a concert for 2 days, and then 6 months later I couldn't do a pumpkin throwing, whatever.
Assuming the pumpkin throwing isn't an agricultural.
Oh, yeah,
right,
I know. I was trying to think
yeah.
of non-agricultural.
Maybe it's from pianos. No
pianos.
No throwing of pianos.
Yes, I could not throw a piano. So that means I could not do the second event,
Right.
because I already used my property for 2.
Right.
So do you feel comfortable with increasing it to 5 acres?
I don't have a problem per se with large outdoor entertainment events. My problem is with venue. It has to be an appropriate venue. To be real close, 100 feet, for instance, I don't think is adequate. I think if you're going to do it on a piece of property, it needs to be a relatively large piece of property, relatively far away from any homes. I agree with Mr. Basari. I think if you live in a residential neighborhood, you have reasonable expectations that you're going to be in a residential neighborhood and you're not going to have large outdoor events next door to you.
Well, and the other thing is what about public safety? And if you're going to have large crowds, the ability for egress,
Well,
like
all
for
those things
big
need to be
events, like
addressed.
those-
Right, and one of the suggestions at one point, in fact, was, I think Rob mentioned this to me a few weeks ago, was whether there's special permit in the site plan. Usually things on the egress are handled through a site plan. We may need, say, as part of this, that the event also has to go through site plan review with the planning board, or it's included as part of the special permit. But on public safety, one of the stipulations, for instance, would be the festival operator shall provide at sole expense public safety personnel to control traffic and provide medical aid, with the staffing levels to be determined by the police and fire chiefs. So for instance, the chiefs are notified through the special permitting process. They could then put their input in to say, okay, you're gonna have so many people at this event. We want 3 officers there. We want an ambulance crew there, or whatever the stipulations. And those stipulations, you couldn't get out of doing this in the sense of whatever the stipulations that the chiefs wanted would be incorporated into
Yeah.
the special permit.
Because what if I was going to have a big concert and I was going to have a big ticket name, like a guy from Marshfield. say.
You could have,
And I go before the zoning board, and then they notify the police chief, and the police chief's like, we don't even have enough police officers that could actually handle the crowd control on the event that you want to have.
In which case, we probably would say no.
Okay, so that's
I
how.
hope they- I hope-
or
I hope
the
they would
amount
say
of
no.
people who can't get into the event that are
Yeah.
still milling
Struggling.
about out on the street.
Well, I guess
Those are
I
the,
think that
one of the main issues that I have, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Rob, is that how many pieces of property do we have in town that people could hold a large event?
Well, it depends on your acreage that you're talking about.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but how, that would influence or infringe upon our neighborhoods.
Well, then how far away is the nearest house? Again, you have to give me some criteria to use to say, okay, Charlie, give me all the pieces of property that no house is closer than X number of feet from.
I don't think we have any, a large piece of property of a house that were more than 50 feet away from the.
Well, but I'm gonna pick on the Nazarella farm here. If you go far enough
Yeah.
away into
Yeah,
Nazarella
yeah,
farm,
yeah.
that it's in fact that far away from those houses.
Well, that's my point, you know, how many pieces of property do we have in town that are owned by private individuals that would allow something,
I know
would
there's
fit the criteria, if you went 5 acres or 2 acres?
several in South Halifax.
yeah, I was gonna say South Halifax would be the first place to look.
105?
Yeah, right.
Rob had his hand
That's
up.
all
Yeah.
swampland out there.
I'm still on the fence. I'm concerned. Again, we're talking about a commercial venue. We do allow this in town with a special permit on commercial properties already. Okay, that's allowed. My concern is, number one, who's going to enforce this? Is that going to be the Board of Selectmen, or is that going to be me?
You,
Because if, well, again, listen,
Knows it. Knows it.
If we have a bylaw that has all these open areas, I'm not gonna be chasing phone calls all day on these events. What's to stop a businessman for a commercial business to do multiple properties? They can do this property and then come over and do this property, and then come over and do this property, and they can keep that going all year round.
Yeah.
I have concerns.
I personally don't like the commercial aspect of it. If it was a private event on a piece of private property, I'd be more inclined to be,
We
Well,
can have private parties, we can have nonprofit parties.
right.
We have venues for that. Now, if the town wants to open it up for businessmen, that's up to the town. We have a venue that is good and works well. But who's to say that everybody is going to do that?
Right.
Well,
Therein
I guess
lies the
my
crux.
issue is, with that statement is that, what if I want to have a cookout and I have a named entertainer come over? There's no barrier that says that it's commercial or anything else. The noise is still going to be the same if
Are
the
you
land
charging
plane
money
change.
for these people to come in?
No, but I'm just saying, whether it's commercial or a private person on the private property allowed, the noise factor, the parking factor is all the same.
But we would have to approve that entertainment
Right, that would be an
license.
entertainment.
So that's what's a little
Like I said,
different
I'm on
about
the
this.
fence. I have
Right.
concerns.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love my fest. I don't have any issues with it. You
Well, we
know.
can't get event specific,
No, I
and that
know,
becomes
but
problematic.
that's why we're doing this, but, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to give somebody else an opportunity here.
Jonathan Soroka, 31 Carver Street. When the planning board, when we originally held a hearing on this, it came about, the fact that the original bylaw states that you can have these kinds of events if they deem to be some sort of agricultural. Other states hold these agricultural fairs and have these like small little festivals and, all these little attractions. Some events are not agricultural, but there are agricultural events. So the fact that we can have an agricultural event here in Halifax only shows its history here. So if we start to stray away from something like that and not have an agricultural kind of event here in an agricultural town, I mean, it kind of takes away its history. per
I don't
se.
think we're talking about agricultural events, we're talking about commercial events. Agricultural events already can be.
Just let me
Yeah.
look at
The original bylaw, though, does state for, you can't have this on agricultural land if it does deem it to be agricultural, an agricultural land. That's what the current bylaw actually shows. But in the grand scheme of it, the 2 acre lot minimum, I mean, that's not including what the area is, that if there's a house or building on that parcel of land within that 2 acres, and how big is the parcel of land that the event is gonna actually be held on? Is it big enough to hold 200, 300, 400 people? What about parking? Are people gonna be parking on the street? And that's gonna be a nightmare for police officers in that sense. Is there gonna be volunteer parking assistants? How's the traffic gonna look like? So there's so many what ifs and things that aren't labeled on this potential change, that if you put this in here and you leave those gray areas open, someone's gonna come in front of you and just attack you with all these gray areas. And all you're gonna do is be able to just shrug your shoulders because we didn't list them all at the beginning.
Mr. Gannon?
Yes, well, I do agree that, as Charlie mentioned earlier, there can be these special permits. There are conditions that can be established and set up, and which can all be spelled out even in the bylaw. I noticed number 2, secondly, that on paragraph 8 that's labeled there, it refers to landowner as in singular. I think a consideration that should be put in, like say 5 of us got together, we each have an acre, so now we meet the 5 acre requirement. It should be the property, maybe something owned in its entirety. Just something to consider, so that something like this gentleman here was talking about could at least be addressed and avoided,
I think Mr. Sirocco's point kind of hit home with me. It's almost like how many conditions can, we have to think of every condition under the sun here to make this thing, totally wrapped up. It'd be a challenge. Ms. Basari?
Yeah. Just so we don't get off point, is when I spoke to people, what they're against is allowing commercial businesses and the special permit. Nobody was downing any event. Okay? Yeah, they had concerns about the 5,000 person a day, multi-day concert. But when it was explained to them, the power of the special permit under the old proposed bylaw change, now we're limiting it to 2 days. But people were told that was for 1 day, and I was explaining to them, no, special permit could be given 7 days a week. All right, so then people, when they realized that we have an absolute protection right now in agricultural residential zones, and if we breach that, now we don't have an absolute protection right now of commercial business. Okay, so I just wanted to make that point. What people are against is that special permit. And we really, and during this conversation, people sometimes are losing the focus that we're talking about commercial business. And those businessmen are gonna want a return on their money if they invest in PA systems or bleachers and let's say they wanna do a
Stages,
motocross. Let's say they wanna do a motocross, and everybody gets in up in arms and fights it, and then next week they wanna do something else that's noisy. So the onus will be on all the residents to forever be vigilant and have to go to the town, the board of the zoning board, or for an entertainment, the selectmen, and say, look, this is our home. I can't retreat any farther back than my home. So I propose that we add to this, and I think 99.9% of the people will get what they want. We'll have people coming into town for businesses, people will get to go to their event. The residents will have a little bit, get something out of it for a little bit of a tax break. I think that if this bylaw change says that 100% of the proceeds go to the town of Halifax in a fund, so they go in for the year and then it gets divvied up between school maintenance, the police equipment, highway department equipment, road repair, the library. So why don't we make this entertainment festival, 100% of the proceeds go to the town?
Because
I would
they,
say that
I-
commercial goes the business of doing.
I think that puts the town in the business of doing this, and I'm
No.
not sure.
No, a person says, I want to put on a festival, an entertainment festival, which is what we're talking about. And if it's about the festival, and if it's about people having a good time, then why don't we do that? And then the people, the residents who have to put up with this traffic, maybe they get a little bit of tax break.
We lose that case in court. Because why would I, as an investor or a private enterprise, put on a festival and to give all the money to the town?
I think the point is you wouldn't. I said, I think the point is that the private investor wouldn't do that if he couldn't keep the profits.
But it wouldn't be commercial.
And then this is.
No, I understand.
I know we're talking about like special permits for the day, but does it open it to that maybe people want to do commercial businesses in residential? Like, are we opening the door?
Yes, we are.
Well, that's my problem with it. It's the commercial aspect of it. I have an issue with that. Mr. Petrilli?
Sorry, you brought up a good point. At what point does it become only a zoning issue and a building issue? You start adding stages and bleachers, now we gotta go to the building code. Now I have to inspect structures. This can be a nightmare for me, and for the town. I'm just saying, how do we approach every angle of this commercial event so that it doesn't become an issue? I understand it can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing.
I think a strictly agricultural event, or the in support of agriculture, is still a little gray, even picking events that are really agriculturally supportive of agriculture, if that doesn't sound too redundant. The commercial aspect on residential property is what concerns me, aside from all the technical issues, which are monumental. I mean, I can see all of that issue. I don't think you could write enough restrictions into a bylaw to cover every possibility.
Like I said, if I have to enforce this on complaints, I can't tell you where this is gonna go. If this ends up in court, not in court, I don't wanna think about it.
Just point one thing out. Obviously, the lawsuit right now that we're dealing with will continue. If it doesn't get settled one way or the other to the satisfaction of all parties, there'll be a winner and a loser. If, in this case, the plaintiff, which is the building inspector and with the support of the Board of Selectmen, wins, all it's going to require is 10 signatures. And something like this, or something that you might find far
More
worse,
egregious, yeah.
will go to town meeting. Now, it still requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting, but if enough people show up, then you may very well get a worse situation than you're worried about tonight. I'm not saying that's a reason to do this necessarily, but I'm giving you a heads up that it could go down that road. And you may say a year from now, I wish we had done a bylaw that in fact put some restrictions in that we wanted. Because you're not going to be able to go to town meeting that night, and because it's a petition article.
Do amendments and this.
Right, it's going to be an up or down on what those 10 people brought to town meeting.
Basically, what we're talking about is, do we want to be preemptive? Because I agree with Charlie. I think if the town prevails, there will certainly be a group that will promote and pursue a bylaw change at town meeting, because it only takes 10 signatures to get a warrant article on. Do we want to be preemptive? That's what we're going to have to struggle with here.
Well, my understanding is the reason we're holding this meeting tonight is to get input as to what should go into the bylaw, not so much whether the bylaw should exist or not, but if we're going to take it before town meeting, and then the decision be made there. But what we're discussing tonight, at least in my mind, is what should be within that bylaw, within reason.
Or if in fact the bylaw should be changed at all, because what I'm hearing from various individuals here is, there's no consensus necessarily on anything, but there's certainly a valid point of view that we shouldn't change the bylaw at all.
Right.
We should leave it the way it is. Like I said, it's a perfectly valid point of view. What I'm saying, however, is that sitting pat may not be the best strategy.
Mr. Passari?
Mr. Garen says something to me that's really running valid, and that's, we don't tell people how many people they have on their property. So why do we put a restriction on it? What if somebody has 1.5 acres and they have to put up with a big event next door to them? And maybe they want to have 20 people at $100 a pop because they got a basketball court, and they want to have a basketball festival twice a year and make $4,000 to pay their property tax. How come only the rich and the land rich are going to benefit from this? So why don't we allow everybody, and on a case-by-case basis, hey, if he's got the room and he wants 30 people, or you grow daffodils and you want to have a daffodil festival, so why, this is what I'm getting at, and what Mr. Guerin said wrong about. Because we don't tell people how many, just because it's a festival, you can have a festival with 50 people. So why, what this stinks of to me, and it did right from the very beginning, is spot zoning through bylaws. And it'll be very interesting what the Attorney General has to say about this.
Well, of course, part of what we're going to deal with here is to see where this court case comes down, because that will have a lot of impact in terms of what we're thinking about, period. We can take this thing in any direction, including and up to and including absurd. I agree with you. At what point do we stop it? But again, at what point do we try to come up with something that protects us and protects citizens? I don't know. We're going to have to keep talking about this.
But also, I know this is where we're trying to guess for the future, but I also look at it as that we do have an issue on our hands, and although it is being litigated right now, the Mudfest thing specifically, because that's the most specific issue that we have, that's the one that I've seen no problem for. That's the one that I think is gonna be tough to regulate or prohibit because of the impact it's had on the town, the amount of people in town that enjoy it, that actually attend it, and the fact that I personally have heard nothing negative about that event.
And it's got a history.
So that's the thing, is, we consider and discuss the types of events that may come, and it's good for us to do that, but the one that we have at hand, is everyone here comfortable, or does everyone here feel as if that should not be allowed? I think most people in the town would be for Mudfest. I believe that, and I think we should let the town voice that opinion. I understand that the music event wasn't popular, I understand that there are other events that will not be, but that's the one that we're dealing with. That's the one that's present in front of us, and that's the one that we should be looking at. Because everything else is just...
The problem is you can't just say, we're all in favor of that, but we don't want to do the rest of them. Everything comes together, that's the issue.
Yeah, I understand, but that's the one that's in front of us, and I don't see anyone opposing that. So that's why I think it's tough to oppose all of them, because the only one that I'm aware of in Halifax is successful. So that's my issue. The only one I know about, the only one that's presented before us is successful, and it's welcomed in town as far as I can tell. So I think it's difficult to only allow that and not allow other ones, and I think that's a problem that we'll have to deal with.
But we have rules in place, and we have to follow the rules that are in place.
At time.
Yeah, right now. And so I don't disagree with you. Nobody seems to have an issue. There are a couple of neighbors on Hemlock Lane that aren't necessarily thrilled all the time, but I mean, for the most part, the town is happy about it. But right now, the way things stand is the opinion of this board and the building inspector that it is not allowed.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Mr. Pitchfield?
This forum's to voice opinions. I voiced my opinion and I agree we should be preemptive. I'd like to add something to the list, that the Board of Selectmen would be in charge of all the zoning that goes with this.
Are you being preemptive for yourself then, Mr. Pitchfield?
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Good move. I admire that move, having been in that position.
I really don't know that in fact we're going to
we're
solve
not.
the issue tonight, but I would suggest that those that have thoughts about what should go into the bylaw, maybe jot that down and get it back to Charlie, or so we can take a look at it.
Or potentially, because it isn't a done deal that we're going to have a proposal
Yeah.
here. I mean,
Well,
this
but-
board could propose it, planning board could propose it, zoning board could propose it, a group of citizens could propose it.
But I think
So-
it's great that we're all together talking about it.
Yeah,
so
this
that
starts
when
the process.
It's important that if whatever we come up with, that we all are united as the three boards going into town meeting. And so I think it's important for us to take the next few months and revisit this again. And Mr. Basari, maybe you could give Charlie your book
One of many, I mean.
of requests. You know, like, and then going forward, like, we meet again and we say, okay, how does it look? What are you thinking? And you know,
So we can all contemplate a little here too,
Yeah.
and think about what we've heard.
Yeah,
and
and-
come
You know,
back with-
personally, I know the Boy Scouts gonna be on board. I mean,
so I just want to verify that, so
Some
the
jamborees.
the zoning board would have jurisdiction, and so, the board of selectmen, even though that we're typically the ones that issue entertainment.
You still would have the live entertainment permit
Oh,
itself.
Yeah, so
Special permit still would be with the zoning.
But
zoning
what
board of
if,
appeals.
what if you had a board here that did not want to issue an entertainment license, and then the zoning board wanted to issue the special permit or vice versa, like, would that person then just be sort of stuck?
Well, they could be stuck, we'll do the hypothetical, is that then the person could say, unless the board would have to cite good reasons
Specific good
not to
reasons.
grant that permit. It's, you know, let's say public safety issues and things like that. I could not, it can't just willy-nilly pick and choose. Because one of the things on live entertainment, especially, you know, commercial less so than non-commercial, but you've got First Amendment issues on entertainment.
Yes, no, I mean, we're, like Mr. Basari said, we're not all gonna be sitting on this board. I mean, whatever we
No.
plan now
Right.
is really for the future, and so
Yeah.
you certainly don't want people that don't, you know.
Yeah, but you couldn't unreasonably restrict it. The special permit has been granted.
Yeah.
The person comes to you and says, okay, I know I need this additional permit from you all. But if the town has already put a whole mass of restrictions on it, if you were unreasonable in terms of not granting or restricting that permit further, you might have some difficulties.
Well, let's say it was about hour of use of the property, and so let's say the ZBA issued a permit that would end at 11 o'clock at night.
Well,
And then we
which
have-
is why you want to get this in there now.
Yes,
If
but let's say it's
Yeah.
11 o'clock,
Okay.
and then we're holding our hearing for the entertainment permit, and we have all the neighbors come in and just say, please, can you make it 10?
Well,
Would our...
That might be reasonable.
Yeah.
Right, and so that, okay, so whatever we would say, or this board
Yes.
would say, would be the, okay,
I can see this thing getting pulled out
yeah, no, I know.
through a thin rope here. I'm even thinking in terms of the amount of people allowed on the property based on the square footage of the property.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have some impact ratios here. But in any event, I don't want to drag this on all night. Mr. Andrews wanted to make one more comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to question if the selectmen denied that, do they then go to the appeals board for an appeal?
No,
No.
because it's not a zoning permit.
Not a zoning board part.
That's,
The live entertainment is a completely different
Right.
statute under state law.
Can't have dead entertainment, but we can
If the
have
chair
live.
would allow, I'd like to go over the other topics that I. had
Yes,
said
I want to kind of end this.
Well, can we do one thing, because I see two young men sitting in the audience, and they look like they're about ready to fall out of their seats. Perhaps we could move it out of order and take them.
I didn't even know that.
No,
they
they're
were
here just for a badge, right? You,
No, we're just here because we were just hoping to talk to you guys afterwards.
oh, you were, oh. I thought you were.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I know we got school and
As a
everything.
board total,
No,
or?
just to talk, I don't know about as a whole, but just to talk, just to have a discussion with them, because about our Eagle projects, we had both finished them.
Well, I think
Should only take
Well,
a couple of minutes.
I'm just saying, they got school, I don't
Yeah,
want to have them here all night long.
If everyone else doesn't mind, maybe we could take care of this really quickly and move on to that one other subject that we wanted to discuss. Come on, guys.
So
Besides, they're both bigger than I am, I wouldn't want to.
I'm John McCarthy, and this is Pat McCarthy. Hello. We had, those of you who don't know us. Yeah. A while ago, we had come before the board to get approval for our Eagle Scout projects. I had built a shed by the blacksmith shop.
Very nice shed too, by the way.
Thank you. And
I had completed water crossings as well as done some trail maintenance for some trails over by Highland Circle.
Oh, excellent.
And so the two of us are just sort of here to say that we had both completed our projects, and they're all sort of, I don't know, I believe that the news that the shed had been completed was had sort of been like just circulated, but I just wanted to,
Well, I drive by it every day, that's
Yeah.
why
well, I just wanted to be here to just sort of say that we had both finished our projects and that it was all done.
Excellent.
Recently gotten the Eagle rank as itself.
Well, congratulations.
boys. Very nice.
Kudos. So you guys have got, what, 30-some Eagle Scouts, and got the largest amount for the smallest group of?
There's a very small group and a very large number of Eagles. It's very surprising that our troop,
Very proud of the troop.
about 20 kids, and I think it's something like 75% make Eagle.
Wow.
So we were mostly here to inform you all of that and to let you know we are working on planning a court of honor of sorts.
Yep.
We don't have any kind of date or schedule yet, but if any of you would like to go,
Oh, please.
Oh, please, yeah, let us know.
Okay, we will be in contact with you guys.
Super.
All right.
Thank you.
And
Great.
congratulations.
Congratulations on your
Thank you,
completion.
guys.
And thank you for toughing it out through all of this.
Yeah, we didn't, I didn't want to interrupt you guys.
You know, Mark Roy has been their basketball coach for many, many years, so I know the boys pretty well.
Excellent.
Have a good
Excellent.
night.
Well, again, thank you. Thank you very much. And congratulations.
Thanks, guys. I was sitting there watching.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what they were here
Oh,
for.
yeah.
Take care, I'll see you at the game.
They didn't call.
Yeah, I thought maybe they were just monitoring.
He does that Pat does the,
Yeah, I know.
so good.
All right, let's move
Okay,
on.
so abandoned housing,
Oh,
we're slowly working through the foreclosure process with the collector treasurer. Eventually, we're gonna own some properties that the housing has been abandoned. The problem is that along with being abandoned housing, it's abandoned use. So, and it's been far more than 2 years of abandoned use for those properties. So the challenge for the town is going to be, we're gonna own those properties. No one's gonna be interested in taking them off our hands, since they would then get to have all the wonderful problems of dealing with taking down a house, maybe dealing with septic systems, hazardous waste dumping.
And not being able to rebuild.
Right. What I would like to do long-term is to be able to turn those house lots into house lots. We don't want to do a town-wide increase in the number of years allowed before an abandoned use, or use becomes abandoned, in the sense of, okay, let's make it 5. Well, some of these properties, it's longer than that. Well, let's make it 10. Well, it's, at some point becomes ridiculous. Instead, what I'm thinking along the lines of is that we, through a special permit process, be able to develop those properties as Chapter 40B units, so that we get a benefit in the long term, whether you have it's owner occupied or it's rental, but it gets back on the tax rolls. The property is no longer an eyesores. Now, it may be a situation that in the short term, we'll have to take the properties over and clear them out or do whatever we have to do to put them in better staying, so they are saleable. But they're only going to be saleable if we can say to a buyer, you can go through this special permitting process and reestablish a house on the property or a home on the property, residential use, but it has to be a 40B. And what this is 2 things. One, bring it back to the tax rolls, but as I'm mentioning later on someplace else, we can start chipping away at our 40B deficit. We're at fewer than 1% of the houses are, as measured by the state, affordable. I know we've got plenty of people, they'll point out the mobile home estates and everything, they don't count. We have something on the order of 3,000 homes in Halifax, so residential units, and we're below 30 for 40B units. And as part of the housing production plan, if we can start chipping away at that number, we are in better protective shape if someone came in with a large development that was a 40B development, to be able to say, we are making progress. This is one of the tools that we have in our toolbox to do that. So I'm trying to get both. One, bring some money back into the town long term, but second, help the town long term on its housing production plan. And wanted to talk with folks about the possibility of doing something along those lines, but we'll have to make some changes in zoning to do that.
So the planning board did get a chance to discuss this at our last meeting. We had a couple thoughts. One of them being, I wasn't sure whether the abandoned use only prescribed to land with a dwelling, or if some of it would be vacant land.
Could be vacant land at this point, because you could still get a special permit, because the abandoned use, when it's abandoned, is abandoned, in the sense of what all those, in fact, given the substandard lots, the only thing you can do with it legally, and Rob can correct me, is it can be a lot. It could be a joint, someone could buy it for $1 from us and just develop it as part of a larger lot.
I think the general consensus is correct, unless we're talking about perhaps a parcel that predates zoning, obviously, that wouldn't be, but is that going to, so if the town owns this, I don't believe the land would be abandoned if it could show a clear title or certificate of title that predated zoning,
Well,
as having no dwelling on it.
no dwelling on it. So if we didn't have one to begin with, you could put a dwelling on it.
If it had one to begin with a dwelling, then it's truly abandoned.
Yeah.
Then it would be an abandoned, because.
The use would have been
The use
abandoned.
would be abandoned.
Okay.
The idea was to take these nonconformities out of use.
And the main difference in my mind was that if the town acquires them, it's a much bigger burden for us to acquire one with a dwelling with a septic system as far as taking that down. So if we could find a way to make those lots desirable by lessering the restrictions, I assume that most of those are not desirable. No one's gonna put money into them to fix them up. And if we could find ways to lessen the restrictions on those and hope that the people who own them now are either willing to invest in them or...
Well, technically, if it's an abandoned lot, or an abandoned building on a lot, if it's in fact has not been used in those 2 years, nobody can actually technically rebuild on it. So what Charlie's proposing,
But
That's
to
what I'm
the
saying.
point, if somebody knows that they have a vehicle to rebuild this, and the price is below market value, they'll buy the rundown structure to rebuild it. You follow? It's
and knowing that they can get permission to
knowing that
rebuild.
they can get permission to rebuild.
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think we should focus on that rather than us acquiring it and trying to do
Well,
something.
but we're already acquiring it. I mean, these properties have been abandoned. I mean, in some cases, we don't even have a property owner per se, in the sense of, there's a property owner of record, but we
Don't know where they are.
we don't, yeah. In other cases, yeah, we know who they are, but it might be now 2 generations even. There's an estate and no one's bothered by the estate. But I think the problem is, I mean, I guess I understand what you're saying,
I
is
just
that.
want to see the town taking on the burden.
There might be future properties that they haven't gone through the 2 years of abandoned use yet. But I'm not sure how we loosen any restrictions, because right now, if they've not been abandoned for 2 years of use, they could do it right now.
Gotcha.
They could go to Rob's office and say, we want to get a building permit to restore the property, as long as it's staying in the
There are some restrictions.
Yeah.
If the value of the restoration is over 50% of the market value of the property, they have to get a special permit. There are vehicles, but it can be done.
But only if you,
Follow through with.
and you're not outside the 2-year window.
Right. If you're, I meant specifically if you're inside the 2-year window.
Standard.
The only thing is, I mean, these people have abandoned them because they are properties they can't do anything with because they've been abandoned for more than 2 years. Now we take them as a town and we make them profitable. It doesn't seem quite right that we've told them, you can't do anything, but as soon as we own it, we're gonna do something with it.
The problem is that if they're doing absolutely nothing with it, now it becomes an issue for the town anyway.
Well,
But they could sell it if that value was there.
Yeah. So by us saying that it is no good because it's been abandoned for 2 years, then no one's going to pursue them, or I couldn't reasonably see people pursuing that.
Okay, so I'm not doing a hypothetical, because I know some of these are this long. I got a house on a substandard lot. No one's been in there for 10 years. We're in the foreclosure process. what do you propose a change in the zoning bylaw that would allow this last property owner to, let's say, okay, they say, okay, I can do something. They pay all the back taxes, they take it out of foreclosure. What's next step? Because we haven't changed, what changes are you proposing that would then allow that property owner to do something?
Okay, this was one of the things that we were discussing, and with the 2-year thing, like you were saying, we can't really eliminate that. We did, at least I felt that we did kind of come at a stalemate on that. I think that was what some of us wanted to do, but we couldn't find the verbiage to actually do it.
There's another issue underlying here, I didn't mean to cut you off. State law also deems these properties abandoned after 2 years. And the whole intent of the state law is to eliminate all nonconformities. So there is a point here that if we allow some construction, be it through 40B or what have you, that we may be in conflict a little bit. So we'd have to do a little
Yeah,
research.
we're certainly getting, we talked to land use council about making the change.
Right. Mr. Becerra?
I'm not sure about Hanson, but I ran into a situation, I believe the 2-year window starts when you take the building down. So can we do that? Can we make it that, not abandonment, but removing the building?
Well,
So if you remove the building, then the 2-year clock starts.
The problem is nobody's removing the building, and that's really what the problem is. And I don't believe that that's the intent of the statute.
Right, I mean, talking with council about this, there's enough case law that says it's not just the fact that the person's abandoned the building. You can probably make a case for non-abandonment if you're taking certain actions. But in these cases, they've done absolutely no taxes are paid, they don't have the utilities on, they're not making active use of the property, nothing's happened. The use is abandoned, despite the structure being there, the use is abandoned.
It's about use, not so much the physical building.
Because Dan, believe me, because I know Hanson, however it's been doing it, has somehow been more liberal about their
And I'm not
definitions.
sure, I'm not
Yeah,
100%
no,
sure.
yeah.
Right. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Mr. Gann?
How many properties are we talking about approximately?
Well, right now, we're talking, 5 or 6,
Yeah,
but I
but there's
suspect as our treasurer collector and the staff, our previous administration was very non-aggressive about moving properties through the tax title process. Our new administration has been a bit more proactive about doing that. And in essence, we've got a sort of a starter set of a half dozen properties or so that are working through. I think there are others now in the pipeline behind them. The thing is, it's a 2 or 3 year process to go through tax title and then foreclosure.
And then there's redemption, there's all kinds of stuff that's.
So right now, we're talking about only a few. I don't know long-term, I'd have to talk to Pam Aducci to find out how many properties in total now are in tax title. Not down the road in a foreclosure process, but even in the initial tax title. Because we've got a lot of properties that are in tax title that we know they're gonna get redeemed. Simply, historically, we've got some property owners that for whatever reasons let the taxes accumulate. I don't know how they make money on it, but they do, enough so that they can pay the 13 or 14 or whatever is percent interest a year. But eventually, just before we get to the next step of hitting foreclosure, boom, here's a check, and they're back,
Yeah, even after they're taken, they have a year to redeem, so it is a complicated process.
Tom, are they basically deeming the property useless? Because in the zoning act, I know you can't deem a property useless.
Well, it can be used, but it just ends up being a lot that can be attached to another lot.
Yeah, but if in fact it's non-conforming, the whole thrust of 40A is to eliminate non-conformities.
Right.
That's really the goal. I mean, we don't do it because we allow special permits, we allow people to fix their homes and what have you.
As Rob said, if it's pre-existing non-conforming prior to zoning, act of what's it, 76, I think it is.
Yeah, but even then it has to meet minimum requirements.
And
The
that
5,000
was
square
specific
feet.
to a lot that's
Right.
never had a dwelling.
Right,
Right,
and owned in its entirety, right?
yeah, and without having been conjoined with any other properties,
Yeah,
blah,
I
blah,
mean,
blah.
we might right now, today, own lots like that.
Yeah, we do.
North of the railroad tracks, for instance, west of Crystal Lake, muddy pond, whichever day of the week it is. We own bunches of lots that we never built on. I don't know that they're buildable for that matter, wetlands or whatever other issues.
Well, actually, the area's not bad.
A lot back there, I would imagine.
The trouble up there is the roads were never developed. So just accessing and finding things is a challenge all by
See
itself.
that tree there? There's your lot.
Well, we have plenty of paper roads that just end nowhere.
Yeah.
Don't ma-
But
no.
I think that's the place to start, though. I think we need to get some legal,
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's interest in doing something like that, that's why I'm trying to help us along with, helping us two ways, get tax money out of it and get some 40B units out of it. I mean, we don't necessarily have to do a 40B, but that sort of opens a larger window for more lots than maybe we want
yeah,
to.
and 40B regulations allow you to do more things inside of zoning than other approaches.
And that does seem double-sided because you also move the property and you can recoup for anything that we caused as far as removal of the old structure and things like that.
Yeah, and 40B gives it cover.
Charlie, just a thought, and I don't know the three, but I know through talking to a counselor that just typically three things that need to be proven. And intent was one of them, up at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And to Mr. Andrews, a question, if these people truly, the intent was to abandon this, they didn't pay their taxes, they haven't been there,
Right,
then their intent was to let it go.
yeah.
That's their loss. If the town has to come in and clean it up, they're picking it up, their intent was to abandon their property. So they no longer have that.
Because our third problem is this, if we say, well, we'll let it just sit, we've got neighbors who are coming to the Board of Selectmen, and probably coming to you, Rob, and whoever else, saying, you're allowing eyesores, not just somebody's unkept front yard, but the whole lot is taking down my value of my house, and you're allowing it to happen. What are you going to do, town of Halifax?
And there's public health issues,
Yeah,
too.
with the
There's
animal.
rodents, and there's...
Yeah.
Eventually, we need to do something with a lot, and if we have to, if we're gonna, I mean, because my worst case scenario is I'm going to town meeting with these lots in hand and saying, well, you know what, I can't do anything, I can't recoup any money, but I want money from you to take down the house, take out the septic system, worry about hazardous waste, and by the way, I'm gonna sell it for $1 to the next door neighbor. Because the next door neighbor's gonna know they have no competition, there's nobody else bidding on that lot, because the only thing we can do is sell it to the next door neighbor.
We'll keep it as open land.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
but
there was that.
Put a playground.
But I've spent how much money,
But you're not gonna recoup it, so.
well, I understand, but this is the idea, is to recoup it. At least have the potential for doing so.
I think that's at least worthy of looking at as an option.
Sort of attached to that, and we're talking about 40B, is back in 2010, Tom was on the Housing Production Committee, or Affordable Housing Committee, and OCPC has been doing a revision of that production plan. While there were plenty of recommendations that were provided in 2010, the town took no action to implement any of them. The idea being, again, that we put up a better defense for larger 40B projects by chipping away at our 40B deficit. They had mentioned a number of ideas. Some of them are, I think, optimistic in terms of the culture of the town, what the town would be willing to do or not do. Some of them may require money in terms of personnel and such. What I was looking at was trying to say, okay, try and keep it simple, try and keep it with zoning changes that don't require additional personnel or research or advocacy or anything like that. And so what I did was take from the newest version, which isn't done yet, but the newest version, and say, what are some things that we could do in terms of the zoning bylaws to make changes that would allow for 40B units? And they range from, we were just talking about the abandoned lots, right, and I'm not saying that anybody's for or against it, I'm throwing this out here and we can see what happens. But we do allow in-law apartments right now. Could we allow a 40B unit apartment to be attached instead? It would be different than in-law in that the in-law requires a common area right now. Could we just do, in essence, it's a rental unit, but it's going to be only allowed with 40B? That's a possibility. Another possibility is on the other end, for instance, if we're going to have additional subdivisions, that is part of the process. A certain number of those units have to be 40B units so we don't fall farther behind. So if it's out of 12 units, maybe 2 or 3 of them are 40B units. So at least we're trying a little bit, if we're not catching up, at least we're not falling behind. There are other possibilities, allowing 2 families by right. In essence, we're talking about the accessory, or the in-law apartment, but starting from scratch, saying, okay, we'll allow a duplex. One of the units has to be a 40B. And there's a, mixed-use development. We're thinking maybe something over by the garden property might end up being a 40R or 40B or something like that long-term. But doing a mixed-use development with commercial and residential, but if you're going to have the commercial, you have some 40B units as residential. But I do, if we just continue to sit and not do anything, even, having a housing production plan accomplishes nothing except having some paper on a shelf. The idea of the housing production plan is to start putting in some possibilities of being able to create 40B units. Not some major scale 300 apartment, structure complex like Pembroke had, but at least on a Halifax scale, do it 1 by 1, or maybe 1 or 2 per development or something like that.
10%'s the guide, right?
We're at less than 1.
No, 10% of the development.
10% right now, there's no way we could catch up, so.
No, I was actually referring to the number of units, 1 per 10.
Maybe we ought to talk to our legislators about allowing us to use the mobile home park. That's part of it.
Makes sense.
That makes no sense with them. They're within our borders, they're residents of the town, they're our buildings, and we can't use them.
Well, I think the mixed-use aspect is also a helpful use. That could actually help with some commercial development, because you can allow some residential mixed in with some commercial. Otherwise, we've got a lot of commercial property that's generating nothing.
We don't have a lot of commercial property.
No. Well, actually, in line with that, I know that's not, well, I know it's probably 20 years ago now, I don't know. When we tried to rezone part of 106, maybe we need to revisit some of that stuff. I know there's a bottleneck up, and it's probably one of the issues with the property that one entity of Cumberland Farms owns at 58 and 106.
Oh, jeez.
To the right-hand side of that property is residential.
Yeah.
So that precludes some development of that property because it's an odd-shaped piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that we can look at. I mean, whether the town's interested in doing something like that or not at town meeting, that's another issue. But those are the types of things that we should be looking at and trying to pick spots that might be helpful.
And is there interest from planning and ZBA to try and implement one or more changes in zoning to encourage 40B? What are people's thoughts about, I'm not saying I'm for or against any particular one, but if we're not doing any of these, what would they propose to try and encourage 40B development so that we get what we want rather than having it shoved on us?
I think as far as the planning board goes, definitely take a look at it again. I mean, the board has changed.
Yeah.
Take a look at it. We talked about cluster zoning before, and that hit a stone wall.
Right. That's something we should think of.
There's different possibilities there. Maybe reducing in some areas what you need for square footage for wetland, upland on a lot to increase so that some of this land can get used rather than, have them come in with a full 40B project and try to cram it down our throat.
Right. Those are all things I think we should be looking at. We don't need to necessarily adopt everything, but at least to explore everything.
Yeah. I mean, when we were doing the master plan, we came up with a lot of that stuff, but it just didn't go anywhere. Nobody wanted it at that time, so that was back in the 90s.
The residents change, moods change.
For my time.
Thinking changes.
1890s.
1890. Anybody else have anything to offer? or any suggestions, any thoughts, other than look at this a little harder from every direction?
Maybe we could all meet in the next, like, 2 months, within the next 2 months.
Yeah, see if anybody's come up with any ideas, proposals, thoughts.
Give us a chance to meet and.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one is on multifamily, and this is due to the constant problems we've had in trying to interpret the bylaw, especially in regards to Halifax Trails and Amanda Estates. I'm not thinking of doing, let somebody else, unless they're going to say to me, this is a priority, we're gonna spend lots of time with council and look at a lot of other examples. I'm not asking anybody right now to do a complete redo of our multifamily zoning bylaws in terms of the zoning. However, I do want to eliminate, or at least eliminate the legal problems with this particular statute in the bylaw that says that for a complex, each building has to be on an individual lot. No one, to my knowledge, has come to me and said, Charlie, the reason we're doing this, why we have this restriction on here, that each building has to be on an individual lot, is because this. No one's been able to provide me with a reason. I know there might have been reasons back in the 1980s, and I don't know if they were very good ones, but certainly currently. I mean, we have Halifax Meadows, we've got Twin Lakes. As far as I know, they don't have one building per lot. They seem to function in terms of infrastructure and getting traffic in and out well enough.
Those were determined by court cases though, too.
Oh, they were?
But and that's sort of my point, is that
Right.
I'm not sure why this is here, and if it is not necessary for a good reason, I want to take it out, because I think it runs I think the planning board and the zoning board of appeals have dealt with this issue for innumerable hours as to how to, if someone wants to come in and do a multifamily, how they're supposed to do a multifamily with this stricture in here. And that's why I want to eliminate it. It doesn't change the fact that multifamily is going to require a special permit. It doesn't change the other requirements for multifamily. It just eliminates this because I don't see any reason for it to be there.
Well, there's another issue in there too, is that 200 by 200 grid thing.
Well,
because we've got as many interpretations as we have people looking at it.
well, and I know what I would want, but I wanted to pick one thing.
No, I understand, but that's also a stumbling
Yes,
block.
yeah.
The planning board has been actually discussing the whole multifamily thing in a whole. I think we all come back to this particular one and believe that this could be excluded, that we should remove this. I would actually like just a little bit more time for us to meet as a board, because we're looking at that as a whole. Although I believe that this will end up, I think we're gonna recommend this gets removed. I'd like to see how it all works with the entire thing.
Because there's general and specific density regulations in there.
I think there are a few things that we can look at.
You want to talk English for a minute?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Rob, I know you talked with me about this, and you had some concerns or questions about if this is taken out, how it would affect everything.
Well, and again, to Mark's point, I don't want to just start eliminating things to eliminate them without creating other problems.
There's a ripple effect with anything you do, and it needs to be.
And I think if the planning board is looking at it in depth.
We have them, yeah.
That would be a good thing.
Well, again, we could put that on the table for a couple of months at the same time, give everybody a chance to review and think about it.
Well, we may be having a special town meeting in November. The reason, if we were ready to go with any of this, and it doesn't sound like any of this is the case, then I was thinking of bringing one or more of these things in November. The reason for the meeting, if we have one in November, is not to do with zoning, it's to do with hops. If the state does give us a grant, we have to have another vote on hops before the end of the year. I'd rather not have a December meeting.
Well, if something's ready, we could.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
but obviously, but in sound, ZBA meets once a month, planning does meet twice a month. I don't want to rush things and have an ill-written bylaw brought simply because I think it's important. But I also don't want to be having another meeting in March and we haven't made any progress. I think, the idea of coming back in a couple months is good,
Yeah,
but
but
as long as
maybe
we're making progress.
we could request that zoning meets once a month. that maybe you do a special meeting in between to just work on,
I was just gonna recommend that,
yeah.
probably a good idea, even if the communications and discussions from the planning board were forwarded in the minutes.
Either that or
to
you
the
could
zoning
maybe-
board, give us a chance to review it too, we'll sit down, maybe pound something up between the two boards.
Yeah, exactly,
And then,
maybe have a joint meeting at some
even if,
point, yeah.
we have to do, members on a voluntary basis to come to your meeting or vice versa or whatever, I think it's
Yeah.
significant enough that it's, let's address it more, the more heads we put together on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The better off we're gonna be.
Sounds like a
That
plan.
that actually makes sense, that's good.
I said it first, Tom.
I know. You beat me to, you always beat me.
Wait a minute,
I know.
wait a minute.
You're trying over.
Well, you're trying to get in on this now. Okay, you're overruled.
I normally am.
Anything else anybody wants to offer?
I guess, I know, not this topic, I mean, the planning board 4 months ago was talking about allowing the marijuana in the commercial district. So I've heard nothing from any of you. We have maybe once every couple of weeks now, people literally or figuratively knocking on our door saying, could I grow marijuana here? Could I have a facility here, whatever? So there's interest, as there is across the state, though, in those towns that haven't already banned it.
I had an inquiry myself today.
So, if, long-term, if there's an interest in
Yep.
allowing the commercial,
Yes,
you're
yeah.
gonna need to make a change to the zoning bylaw.
And I've had people ask me about the fact, didn't we just pass the bylaw, something about you could have farming and, just marijuana, try to.
In the
farm
industrial
privately?
zone.
Yeah, well, they didn't hear that part.
Yeah.
Can grow it on the pavement.
On the pavement. Or,
You want the greenhouse, you want a little control. Got it, if you, just laying it out there, it doesn't work anymore.
well, I think we're good at this point, unless all of you want to stay for the rest of this really exciting meeting. I'm seeing everybody leave now.
If one of you want to go out and buy some coffee and bring it in, it would be great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your efforts.
Yeah, this was a really great meeting. Thank you, Rob.
You don't get paid extra for this, but just saying.
See you tomorrow.
Other duties is necessary.
Comp time.
Maybe, let's just.
Library roof.
Is that where we are?
No,
Oh,
we have to, at some
we
point,
talked
go
about
do
the float in the
maintenance,
pond.
but-
I gave that to the chief already. Inventory forms, library roof leak. I'm gonna contact Cape Way and see, because they said they were taking responsibility for any damage, so let's see
Yes.
if they're good to the word first.
Yeah, no, they talked about that at the meeting, but if you could call them.
Yeah, I will. Old ladder sign for the fire department, what's the board's pleasure on that? And you could go to I could check with Susan Basile, see if they want to put that in the museum.
Sure,
Yeah.
why not?
I would love to see that go in there,
Absolutely.
either down in the old school building.
Okay, let me check with Susan. Truck exclusion on Pine Street, they've got the ropes out, so they're doing the counts by the end of, sometime next week I should know. I know traffic safety's meeting Friday, I'll just tell them, eventually we're gonna get that, but that, on the truck exclusion, that's the first step. Eventually, if we wanna move forward, we'll have a hearing and everything like that.
I can't be there on Friday. If either of you want to attend, you should
I'm
think
gonna be
about
in
it.
Vermont for my,
So, just
Fire
putting it
can't
out
meet
there.
in Massachusetts.
no, it's the one meeting a year that the Maya Re has to meet in Vermont.
It sounds like it's a setup here.
Because it's there's
It
only
is.
certain, there's only certain seats that.
Now, where's this gonna take place at?
Here, 9 o'clock on Friday,
This Friday.
this Friday. Ted had put out the call asking to have a meeting, and that's what we set it up for.
Okey dokey.
I don't think any permanent decisions are being made.
So if I shouldn't darken the door, it would be a problem.
No. If you've got other duties. Regional dispatch, we just had gotten a note from Captain Reardon over in Duxbury that they have been getting this fair amount of grant money, 119 for director, 400K for design and architectural fees for a new center, because I guess they are continuing to expand, because now they'll be getting Rochester. I don't understand how they're getting $1 million for Rochester, but it says to they're getting design work, but I guess it's to redo the center, make it,
Yes.
expand it.
Yeah.
So it's not just, so I almost read it as a new center, but I guess the architectural work would be for
No.
redesigning the
That's
center.
a lot of
was- no, this
interior,
was-
that's a lot of interior work for $1
No,
million
because
bucks.
originally, they were gonna get a whole new building,
Mhm.
because Plymouth was also
Yes.
looking at it. And so that is just literally for the planning design of the new
The
building.
400,000, but then there's
Yes.
1.1 million for the transfer for Rochester.
Yes, because, yes,
Okay, that's a heck of a lot of money.
yeah. I mean, they are definitely gonna have to do some stuff in the interim to create more stations.
Mhm.
And don't forget that that grant also will pay for Rochester to become sort of the same, all the infrastructure, all those kinds of things that needs to be in place
Okay, that's
there.
true, right,
in
when we
order
did our
to-
station,
yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, so it's pretty reasonable. I mean, it was a great award. It was the highest award in the
Really?
state.
Yeah, they didn't give out a lot of money to a lot of communities, this one did very, very well.
Mhm.
My only thing about I had emailed Captain Rear about it and said, well, when's the meeting on the 19th? What time? He says, well, this is for the chiefs. I'm a little,
No, so what they do is, once a month they do it, just the chiefs.
yeah.
And
Well,
then,
this is an annual meeting he was mentioning on the
Yeah.
19th.
no, they're doing another meeting where they're gonna invite like, sort of like I'm usually, because I'm the liaison, I'm typically invited, but that particular meeting is normally just the
Okay.
chiefs. I don't get to go.
Okay.
Lincoln Street photographs?
Yeah, let me get the, Lincoln Street with the earth removal project. For some reason, today was the day that everything came to a head. We've had problems with the trucks going down Indian Path Road.
Right.
We've had complaints about that. I talked to Bill Matt a couple of times about that and Morris Brothers. That I'm hoping is ended. But we had two people come into the office, they asked them when the project was going to be completed, because they're getting tired of the truck traffic. Pam, you had talked to somebody in Morris Brothers, but they didn't have a definitive.
Yeah, that was a gentleman that came in
Yeah.
from Hillside, I think.
But-
And the other couple came in when we got.
Right, but you talked to Morris Brothers, and was it Brendan?
Brendan, yes.
Yeah.
So he is coming in at our next meeting.
On the 10th.
Yeah, and I explained to him that people were asking us to be done, they're thinking about it,
Yeah.
the end of the year.
One of the biggest issues that I've seen is that you have 2 or 3 trucks coming at the same time. When they were coming out singly, or
Mhm.
space in between it was great, but I had the same incident. I came down Lincoln Street today, and 2 trucks were coming up at the same time, and there was no way to get by. You had to set aside until they were.
But this afternoon, someone took a photograph of one of the trucks being on Lincoln Street with the school bus.
Yeah.
Well, the phone call was, hey, I've seen this on Facebook, so I don't know what you want me to do, because,
Yeah, but are they supposed to stop running in the afternoon?
Yeah.
they're not supposed to be running where the buses are running.
Yes.
That was one of the-
That was one of our
That was one
major
of our
stipulations.
specifications.
I think we need to send a serious message to them, because they have been pretty naughty.
So I don't know what you want me to do. I've made phone calls, obviously.
And they're not
on Indian-
returning.
No. They've been very good about taking my phone, about, dealing with Indian Path and everything, but.
No,
it-
but obviously they're not, because it's happening again.
Well, this is Lincoln Street.
Right.
But that's
So-
another
Yeah,
violation.
that's a
Still, the other
violation.
violation
No,
was-
I'm in
right.
agreement, but I'm not sure. I've made the phone calls already and in essence put them, not about this, because this happened late enough. I put them on notice about the other problems. I can certainly make another phone call to them and say that,
Well, I'd like to see a phone call made and a letter sent to them that over the past.
That we revoke the
past
permit
few-
if this
over
isn't
the past
brought
few
under
weeks,
control.
these are the incidents that have happened. We have complained, the buses, the trucks are pulling out one behind the other, which causes a delay.
And
You know,
yeah.
Just lay it all out to them, so at least they can't say, well, we didn't know.
Yeah, this could cause termination or
Well,
revocation. of
Could
permit.
I make a suggestion that the next instance will cause
Yeah.
termination of the permit? Just because I'm done, I'm personally done with it.
Yeah. We thought we vetted this. We spent a lot of time on it. Everybody was in agreement, and now they're just,
Yeah.
they're not getting adult supervision is what the problem is. They're letting the trucking
Yeah,
companies run their own
nobody's
show.
supervising the trucks that are coming out of
Well,
it,
they're gonna
because like I
feel the pain.
said,
Pam, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to let the board know that they are coming in on the 10th, so we should.
Well,
I don't wanna
understand that.
wait that
Yeah,
long.
Right.
That's
and
too
my
long.
problem is with the board also is waiting 2 weeks and not dealing with the complaint for those 2 weeks.
No. I think they still should come on the 10th, but I
Yes.
think they should come in
Yeah.
with a letter in hand saying, okay, these are the complaints, this is what we're gonna do about it.
I'd go so far as to say if we see another violation, that will in fact lead to revocation, and then they can come in for a hearing.
Yes,
For
you can come in for the
reinstatement.
10th for the hearing. Yes. I'll make that motion.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I needed some direction.
Yeah, and you can just tell them that we're very.
You don't know how to get home yet, Charlie?
No, there are so many ways of doing so. Then, okay.
Always stop saying.
Yeah, I got a request late today from Stefan Galfi, who lives I think on Laurel Street. Laurel goes from 106 and then heads to the old landfill and
Right,
sort of
field
dead
transfer
ends.
station,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where Circuit makes, a Circuit curves in and curves back out to 106. The four-way intersection between the two is a weird intersection, I agree.
Very weird.
But they'd like to have stop signs placed at all four corners of that. Also, he said that there are no stop signs for either end of Circuit as it goes out
Yeah,
into
that's,
Plymouth,
he'd be accurate.
along with the Laurel Street. So what I'm going to do, unless you tell me to do something else, is since we have the Traffic Safety Committee meeting on Friday anyway, I will bring that up on Friday. I'll get a recommendation from them and bring it back to the board on the 10th.
Yeah, that's a reasonable thing to do.
Just an update on Montponset Pond. We did have a clean test for West Montponset Pond last week, but we need 2 consecutive. We'll find out, I'm hoping Thursday or Friday, if we've got a second clean test. East Montponset is still open. Brockton is not diverting. They can't divert until October 1. But in addition, the water level, I believe, in Montponset Pond is too low right now. Even if they could
Yes.
divert onto the dates, it's too low. And we're talking about Morse Brothers. I think that Kenny Niffin's going to be in on the 10th to talk about Fitzgerald Garden. And I'm still, as I mentioned, waiting to hear back from Macomb about the benches at the memorial
Could
area.
I also ask one other thing? I know that also on the 10th, we're going to talk about the hops and parking there. But I
Yes.
also, I sent you a photo last night, and I said I would talk to you about
Yes.
it, but I didn't get an
Right.
opportunity today.
You did.
And so what, instead of putting bricks, they're gonna sell bricks at Hops to raise the last $25,000. And instead of doing bricks on the ground, the thought would be to put bricks into benches. Gray, so it would be very classy looking. So that was the picture. So I told them I would run
Looks
it by
like a
them.
wall to me.
No, it's actually bench.
Okay.
It's a bench. So
Just didn't have a back, right?
Yeah, where would
No, it doesn't have a back.
where would this bench go?
Well, they're gonna sit around the playground, but, so I think it might not be a bad idea to invite Hops in on that same date if we
Okay.
could, and then they can take that as an opportunity to sort of plug.
Okay.
And they also have a new date for the Hops for 2018, and they can.
For the
talk-
Hop for Hops?
Hop for Hops. would
Okay, the
be-
5K.
Yeah. May
Okay.
20th, but.
So Pam, what I'll do is I'll invite Hops in, but it'll be at the same time as we're having the parking lot discussion. Because I think we're already getting booked into the evening.
And they were very concerned about the parking.
Library.
Yeah,
lot,
right.
already
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah, and Hops was, when I met with them last night,
Mhm.
they were upset about the parking. They're, because it's gonna be open again.
Right. Okay.
I think we ought to look into the way things are going over there and with the parking, that they might want to extend that parking lot at some point in the future. Give them more parking space over there, because hopefully it'll settle the arguments. If we can put some, just as you come in the driveway, push it out.
So you only have.
So that's just a thought.
One more thing, Charlie, vehicle maintenance.
Oh, yes, sorry, we skipped over that. The fire chief had written the highway surveyor a couple weeks ago about concerns that the highway mechanic had not been able to do timely routine maintenance, but also when vehicles needed immediate assistance, that he wasn't available. And wasn't receptive to the idea, I guess, also.
I wasn't experienced.
The Council on Aging Director had mentioned to me just in the last couple of weeks some concerns about vehicle maintenance. What's happened since then is that we've got in a schedule for regular vehicle maintenance so that each department has a particular day.
We've tried that, Charlie.
Okay, well, all I can tell you is this is what I got for in the
All
last 2
right,
weeks.
and I will tell you
Yeah.
that many years ago, we were having
12
issues
years.
with the police department when we weren't replacing vehicles on the schedule, that we had a lot of older vehicles.
Yes.
And we had more than one instance, and a police officer went to get into their vehicle, and it didn't start to go to an emergency. And so we really needed things to be done on a more timely basis. And we came up with the schedule. Dave came up with the
Right.
schedule, Bob, Mondays was the highway, Tuesdays was, and so that has already been in place, so that's not anything that should be new.
Okay, well, it's new to me.
Okay, it's not, it's not new.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that's the fix.
Yeah,
If
but
people are thinking that's the fix, I don't know if that's the fix. And this is something that I've heard about for many, many, many years, and it's a serious issue. These are public safety vehicles that we can't go without an ambulance for a week because it messes with our response times for our we use that second ambulance a lot. So you're dealing with somebody's potential life of a delay because now we have to wait for mutual aid. And I know this is secondary, but it also important. All that revenue goes with that mutual aid. So it's a safety and it's a revenue issue, and it needs to be addressed.
I guess
Go ahead. Because my question is that, have we had the same mechanic, or
Yes.
what are the requirements for the mechanic to keep his skills toned throughout the
No.
years?
There are some vehicles that there are some things that he cannot do on a public safety vehicle, on the ambulance or the engine. There's
Yeah, he's
certainly
not
some
allowed to
things
do, yeah.
he's not allowed to do. But there are minor things that he can do. And so maybe they haven't been using the weekly schedule. Maybe reintroducing that is gonna fix it. But that's something that we're really gonna have to stay on top of, because I was so upset to hear that this was back again into being an issue.
Does the town mechanic, does he have any other responsibilities? Is he diverted from
No.
mechanical work? Is he
No.
taken on to do other highway department issues?
No,
Okay, so he is strictly,
yes.
So the idea with the schedule is, that's the regular maintenance. So I'll pick an oil change as an example.
right, that would be considered
Okay,
regular.
so that you don't need an emergency oil change. So you make sure that that vehicle's coming due for an oil change, you schedule it, let's say it's a police vehicle and police get Thursdays. Okay, that police vehicle's going down there for their oil change on Thursday. However, you got a health and safety, you got to get something fixed now, that's not regular maintenance, that's superseding, for all departments, that
Regular maintenance.
superseding everything that the regular maintenance. I guess we have the third area, which is stuff he can't do, but I think that, as you pointed out, that's always the case.
Yes, that's not.
So what I'd like to do is, while this has already gone out once from the highway and IT, because it's set up so that we get
Letter
tickets
from the
set
board.
up, or for me just saying, look, I understand the schedule's here. If any department on this starts having problems during the next 2 weeks, please tell me. If you have problems with that, so I can bring it back to the board on the 10th. If problems are occurring after the 10th, please make sure you tell me or you tell the board, because we want to know whether this is working or not.
Right.
Okay, is there a list of what we call regular maintenance? So because when the car comes in for oil change, you can also check the muffler system, the brakes, shocks, all that stuff. It's got it jacked up anyway, all those things. I just want to know if that's a list of what they're doing, or is he specifically just changing the oil?
But there are also, the other positive thing about having our police vehicles turn over is that there's a lot of that is covered through the dealership. So Dave hasn't had to do some of those things, which is great. So that should
Yeah, but I'm
ease the
saying,
schedule.
even if it's covered by the thing, for a person to do an oil change, you got it jacked up anyway. You check those things, so if there's something seriously
Well,
wrong.
I would hope that there's a checklist that
Yeah.
that they
So
go down.
then what I will ask is there a checklist for each vehicle
Yeah,
when it
because
comes
I
in for
think
regular
they'd also
maintenance?
be part of
What,
it.
if there is, can we have copies of it? If it isn't, then they need to be established.
I mean, that's typically how it's handled in any commercial gas station, garage, what have you. The vehicles that typically take the most time would be the heavy equipment.
What do you got?
If there's a breakdown in a piece of heavy equipment, that takes some time.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, and we turn them over fast enough, I think, that, you know, huge issues shouldn't be occurring. If with regular maintenance, they should be in pretty good shape.
Which is one of the reasons too, is you're both saying there has to be the regular maintenance schedule, and we have to allocate time for that to happen so
Right.
that minor problems don't become major
big
problems.
problems.
Big problems. I mean, if there's a brake line that's wearing through or something, it should be an inspection.
To Troy's point, you get it up on a lift and you see radiator fluid leaking, you know, that's not a good sign. That's something that should be taken care of.
So,
Green dripping, it's just alien scum.
No, I'm sure he's finally, I'm sure he's probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure they have a
I'm not
maintenance
gonna
schedule.
take it for granted. I
Yeah.
won't.
I'm
we
just
should
upset
have-
about the timing of it, and I was very upset about the
Yes.
last incident, because that was totally unacceptable. So,
So, we'll get a report back on that.
I'm very spirited about it.
Yes, you are. That's why we're moving on. Is that the last item?
Nope.
No, because we got road
Road
openings
openings.
and you got abatements.
Yes.
Don't be baiting me.
Wait a minute. Okay, what's our deadline for a bid?
The next 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
All right, do you want me to do the abatements? I'll move them.
No, okay, sure. Okay, so you can say that,
Yeah, whichever I have, it's all the same thing.
they're all the same.
So I'm just gonna name,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say as printed,
Yeah.
that I make a motion that we approve the 2018 recycling fee abatement requests that are as printed in the handout
For today's date.
for today,
today's date.
for September 26th.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in fa-
Sorry, all these, the reason for doing so is because of getting the letters from the companies saying that they're already handling their own recycling.
They
That's
followed-
very good
they
to add
followed
that
the-
for those people who are wondering what we're doing.
They followed the procedures that we've established to, well, for this.
Because I mean, there are other reasons that we do abate things, I just want to make it clear on the record.
Yes, exactly. These are just,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now on the road cut, we got,
So those are the only abatements was, that
Yeah.
they have they have a private contract?
Yeah.
yeah, that was,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure, no seasonal or anything
No.
like that,
Nope,
okay.
nope.
so 4 Spruce Street installed new gas line with a 4x6 road cut, with a 4x30 road cut trench, and there's no stipulations at all.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then the next one is 34 McCullen Road, install new gas service with a 4x6 cut and a 4x30 road trench. And there's only one stipulation, and that there's a detail officer, so I'll move it as that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
They must be doing a discount on collecting, making connections, because it's super expensive.
Well, they've caught up. The gas company's caught up, so that they're...
Yeah, I wanted to do it, but it's a lot of money, even though it's right in front of my house.
Yeah, I've got one right in front of my house too, 8-inch main.
I want to
Charles,
guess
did you
do
want
Well,
to
they'll
do
do it.
times for the,
Yeah, it's like
October 24th?
No, because we don't know
It was
what's
like
happening
10 years
yet.
ago.
No,
Right.
no, they'll give you
No.
75
Because I don't know what we're gonna get
Give you
for
what?
firms.
75 feet.
Right,
We may do a special meeting instead.
okay. And Troy, when you do them right, you do.
I'm trying to keep them in order.
Yeah, and then I'll flip them the other way, yeah, that's fine, just pass them along.
I think that's all we got, right?
Oh, there we go, okay. And then sister will take them, just take them just like that, and then flip them downwards for Tom.
Yep, I will.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
We're keeping
And
these
let
in
there only be
order.
good
I'm
news.
Flipping them down for you.
You're flipping them down for Pam.
Yeah, and then, right, and then you're gonna flip them over.
And then you're
Tom.
gonna flip them over, Tom.
Just flip them,
Don't you have stamps?
not in the budget.
I've got a stamp over here for you.
Of your signature?
Yeah.
You do?
I used to have one.
You guys want to move to adjourn, and I can,
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.